Shemoth, Exodus, chapter 35. And Moshe assembled all the congregation of the children of Israel, and said to them, These are the words which Yahweh has commanded you to do. Work is done for 6 days, but on the 7th day it shall be Kodesh to you, a Sabbath of rest to Yahweh. Anyone doing work on it is put to death. Do not kindle a fire in any of your dwellings on the Sabbath day. And Moshe spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel. This is the word which Yahweh commanded, saying, Take from among you a contribution to Yahweh. Everyone whose heart so moves him, let him bring it as a contribution to Yahweh, gold and silver and bronze, and blue and purple and scarlet, and fine linen, and goat's hair, and ram skins dyed red, and fine leather, and acacia wood, and oil for the light, and spices for the anointing oil, and for the sweet incense, and shoham stones, and stones to be put in the shoulder garment and in the breastplate. And let all the wise-hearted among you come and make all that Yahweh has commanded: the Mishkan, its tent and its covering, its hooks and its boards, its bars, its columns, and its sockets, the ark and its poles, the lid of atonement and the veil of the covering, the table and its poles, and all its utensils, and the showbread, and the lampstand for the light, and its utensils, and its lamps, and the oil for the light, and the incense altar, and its poles, and the anointing oil, and the sweet incense, and the covering for the door at the entrance of the Mishkan, the altar of burnt offering with its bronze grating, its poles and all its utensils, the basin and its stand, the screens of the courtyard, its columns and their sockets, and the covering for the gate of the courtyard, the pegs of the Mishkan and the pegs of the courtyard, and their cords, the woven garments to do service in the Kodesh place, the Kodesh garments for Aaron, the Kohen, and the garments of his sons to serve as Kohanim. And all the congregation of the children of Israel withdrew from the presence of Moshe, and every one whose heart lifted him up, and every one whose spirit moved him, came, and they brought the contribution to Yahweh for the work of the tent of appointment, and for all its service, and for the Kodesh garments. And they came, both men and women, all whose hearts moved them, and brought earrings and nose rings, and rings and necklaces, and all golden goods, even every one who made a wave offering of gold to Yahweh. And every man with whom was found blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen and goat's hair and ram skins dyed red and fine leather brought them. Everyone who would make a contribution to Yahweh of silver or bronze brought it, and everyone with whom was found acacia wood for any work of service brought it. And all the wise-hearted women spun yarn with their hands, and brought what they had spun, the blue and the purple, the scarlet, and the fine linen. And all the women whose hearts lifted them up in wisdom spun the goat's hair, and the rulers brought shoham stones, and the stones to be put in the shoulder garment and in the breastplate, and the spices and the oil for the light, and for the anointing oil, and for the sweet incense. The children of Israel brought a voluntary offering to Yahweh. All the men and women whose hearts moved them to bring all kinds of work which Yahweh, by the hand of Moshe, had commanded to be done. See, Yahweh has called by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Yehudah, and he has filled him with the Ruach of Elohim, in wisdom, in understanding, and in knowledge, and in all work, to make designs, to work in gold, and in silver, and in bronze, and in cutting of stones for mounting, and in carving wood, to work in all workmanship of design. And he has put in his heart the ability to teach. In him and Ohilab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, he has filled them with skill to do all work of the engraver and the designer and embroiderer in blue and purple and in scarlet, in fine linen, and a weaver doing any work, and makers of designs. Chapter 36. And Bezalel, and Holiab, and every wise-hearted man, in whom Yahweh has given wisdom and understanding, to know how to do all work for the service of the Kodesh place, shall do according to all that Yahweh has commanded. And Moshe called Bezalel, and Holiab, and every wise-hearted man, in whose heart Yahweh had given wisdom, every one whose heart lifted him up, to come and do the work. And they received from Moshe all the contribution which the children of Israel had brought for the work of the service of making the Kodesh place. But they still brought to him voluntary offerings every morning. So all the craftsmen who were doing all the work of the Kodesh place came, each from the work he was doing, and they spoke to Moshe, saying, The people bring much more than enough for the service of the work which Yahweh commanded us to do. Then Moshe commanded, and they sent this word throughout the camp, saying, Let neither man nor woman do any more work for the contribution of the Kodesh place. And the people were withheld from bringing, for what they had was enough for all the work to be done, more than enough. Then all the wise-hearted ones among them, who worked on the Mishkah, made 10 curtains woven of fine linen, and blue and purple and scarlet. They made them with cherubim, the work of a skilled workman. The length of each curtain was 28 amma, and the width of each curtain 4 amma, all the curtains having one measure. And he joined 5 curtains one to another, and the other 5 curtains he joined one to another. And he made loops of blue on the edge of the end of one curtain on the seam. The same he did on the edge of the end curtain of the second on the seam. 50 loops he made on one curtain, and 50 loops he made on the edge of the curtain on the seam of the second. The loops held one curtain to another. And he made 50 hooks of gold, and joined the curtains to each other with the hooks, and the Mishkah became one. And he made curtains of goat's hair for the tent over the Mishkan. He made 11 curtains. The length of each curtain was 30 amma, and the width of each curtain 4 amma, the 11 curtains having one measure. And he joined 5 curtains by themselves, and 6 curtains by themselves. And he made 50 loops on the edge of the end curtain in one, and 50 loops he made on the edge of the curtain, joining the second. And he made 50 bronze hooks to join the tent, to be one. And he made a covering for the tent of ram skins, dyed red, and a covering of fine leather above that. And for the Mishkan, he made boards of acacia wood, standing up. The length of each board was 10 amma, and the width of each board an amma and a half. Each board had 2 tenons for binding one to another. So he did to all the boards of the Mishkan. And he made boards for the Mishkan, 20 boards for the south side. And he made 40 sockets of silver to go under the 20 boards, and 2 sockets under each of the boards for its 2 tenons. And for the other side of the Mishkan, for the north side, he made 20 boards, and their 40 sockets of silver, 2 sockets under the one board, and 2 sockets under the other board. And he made 6 boards for the west side of the Mishkan, and he made 2 boards for the 2 back corners of the Mishkan. And they were double beneath, and similarly they were complete to the top by 1 ring. So he did to both of them for the 2 corners. And there were 8 boards, and their silver sockets, 16 sockets, 2 sockets under each of the boards. And he made bars of acacia wood, 5 for the boards on one side of the Mishkan, and 5 bars for the boards on the other side of the Mishkan, and 5 bars for the boards of the Mishkan at the rear, westward. And he made the middle bar to pass through the boards from one end to the other. And he overlaid the boards with gold, and their rings he made of gold to be holders of the bars, and overlaid the bars with gold. And he made a veil of blue and purple and scarlet, and fine worked linen. It was made with cherubim, the work of a skilled workman. And he made 4 columns of acacia wood for it, and overlaid them with gold, with their hooks of gold. And he cast 4 sockets of silver for them. And he made a covering for the tent door of blue and purple and scarlet and fine woven linen, made by a weaver. And its 5 columns with their hooks. And he overlaid their tops and their rings with gold, but their 5 sockets were of bronze. Chapter 37. And Betsael made the ark of acacia wood, 2.5 amma long, and an amma and a half wide, and an amma and a half high. And he overlaid it with clean gold, inside and outside, and made a molding of gold all around it. And he cast 4 rings of gold for it, for its 4 feet, 2 rings on its one side, and 2 rings on its other side. And he made poles of acacia wood, and overlaid them with gold. And he put the poles into the rings at the sides of the ark, to lift the ark. And he made a lid of atonement of clean gold, 2.5 amma long, and an amma and a half wide. And he made 2 cherubim of beaten gold. He made them from the 2 ends of the lid of atonement, 1 cherub at one end on this side, and the other cherub at the other end on that side. He made the cherubim from the lid of atonement, from the 2 ends. And the cherubim spread out their wings above, and covered the lid of atonement with their wings, with their faces toward each other. The faces of the cherubim were toward the lid of atonement. And he made the table of acacia wood, 2 amma long and an amma wide, and an amma and a half high. And he overlaid it with clean gold, and made a molding of gold all around it. And he made a rim, a tophah, all around, and made a molding of gold for the rim all around it. And he cast 4 rings of gold for it, and put the rings on the 4 corners that were at its 4 legs. The rings were next to the rim, as holders for the poles to lift the table. And he made the poles of acacia wood to lift the table, and overlaid them with gold. And he made the utensils which were on the table, its dishes and its cups and its bowls, and its jars for pouring, of clean gold. And he made the lampstand of clean gold. He made the lampstand of beaten work, its base and its shaft, its cups, its ornamental knobs, its blossoms were from it. And 6 branches came out of its sides, 3 branches of the lampstand out of one side, and 3 branches of the lampstand out of the other side. There were 3 cups like almond flowers on one branch, with ornamental knob and blossom, and 3 cups like almond flowers on the other branch, a knob and a blossom, so for the 6 branches coming out of the lampstand. And on the lampstand were 4 cups like almond flowers, its knobs and blossoms, and a knob under the first 2 branches of the same, and a knob under the second 2 branches of the same, and a knob under the third 2 branches of the same, for the 6 branches coming out of it. Their knobs and their branches were of it. All of it was one beaten work of clean gold. And he made its 7 lamps, and its snuffers, and its trays of clean gold. He made it of a kikar of clean gold, and all its utensils. And he made the incense altar of acacia wood, an amma long and an amma wide, square and 2 amma high. Its horns were of it. And he overlaid it with clean gold, its top and its sides all around, and its horns. And he made a molding for it of gold all around it. And he made 2 rings of gold for it, under its molding, at its 2 corners on both sides, as holders for the poles with which to lift it. And he made the poles of acacia wood, and overlaid them with gold. And he made the Kodesh anointing oil, and the clean incense of sweet spices, according to the work of the perfumer. Chapter 38. And he made the altar of burnt offering of acacia wood, 5 amma long and 5 amma wide, and 3 amma high. And he made its horns on its 4 corners. The horns were of it, and he overlaid it with bronze. And he made all the utensils for the altar, the pots and the shovels and the basins and the forks and the fire holders. He made all its utensils of bronze. And he made a grating for the altar, a bronze network, under its rim, midway from the bottom. And he cast 4 rings for the corners of the bronze grating, as holders for the poles. And he made the poles of acacia wood, and overlaid them with bronze. And he put the poles into the rings on the sides of the altar, with which to lift it. He made the altar hollow with boards, and he made the basin of bronze, and its stand of bronze, from the bronze mirrors of the serving women who did service at the door of the tent of appointment. And he made the courtyard. For the south side, the screens of the courtyard were of fine woven linen, 100 amma long, their 20 columns and their 20 sockets of bronze. The hooks of the columns and their bands were of silver. And for the north side, the screens were 100 amma long, their 20 columns and their 20 sockets of bronze. The hooks of the columns and their bands were of silver. And for the west side, there were screens of 50 amma, their 10 columns and their 10 sockets. The hooks of the columns and their bands were of silver. And for the east side, eastward, 50 amma, 15 amma of screens on one side with their 3 columns and their 3 sockets, and 15 amma of screens the other side of the courtyard gate, on this side and that side, with their 3 columns and their 3 sockets. All the screens of the courtyard all around were of fine woven linen, and the sockets for the columns were of bronze. The hooks of the columns and their bands were of silver, and the overlay of their tops was of silver. And all the columns of the courtyard had bands of silver. And the covering for the gate of the courtyard was the work of an embroiderer, of blue and purple scarlet, and of fine woven linen, 20 amma long, and the height along its width was 5 amma, corresponding to the screens of the courtyard. And the columns were 4, and their sockets of bronze 4. Their hooks were of silver, and the overlay of their tops and their bands was of silver. And all the pegs of the Mishkan and of the courtyard all around were of bronze. These were the appointments of the Mishkan of the witness, which was appointed by the command of Moshe for the service of the Levites, by the hand of Ithamar, son of Aaron, the Kohen. And Betsael, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Yehudah, made all that Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And with him Aholiab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, an engraver and designer, an embroiderer, in blue and purple and scarlet, and in fine linen. All the gold prepared for the work, and all the work of the Kodesh place, and it was the gold of the wave offering, came to be 29 kikars and 730 shekels, according to the shekel of the Kodesh place. And the silver from the ones counted of the congregation was 100 kikars, 1,775 shekels, according to the shekel of the Kodesh place. A beka, half a shekel for a head, according to the shekel of the Kodesh place, for everyone passing over, to those counted from 20 years old and above, for 603,550. And the 100 kikars of silver were for casting the sockets of the Kodesh place, and the bases of the veil, 100 sockets from the 100 kikars, a kikar for each socket. And of the 1,775, he made hooks for the columns, and overlaid their tops and made bands for them. And the bronze of the wave offering was 70 kikars, and 2,400 shekels. And with it he made the sockets for the door of the tent of appointment, and the bronze altar, and the bronze grating for it, and all the utensils for the altar, and the sockets for the courtyard all around, and the bases for the courtyard gate, and all the pegs for the Mishkan, and all the pegs for the courtyard all around. Chapter 39. And of the blue and purple and scarlet they made woven garments to do service in the Kodesh place. And they made the Kodesh garments which were for Aaron, as Yahweh has commanded Moshe. And he made the shoulder garment of gold, of blue and purple and scarlet, and of fine woven linen. And they beat out sheets of gold, and cut it into threads, to work it in with the blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen, the work of a skilled workman. They made shoulder pieces for it to join it. It was joined at its two edges, and the embroidered band of his shoulder garment that was on it was of the same work of gold and blue and scarlet, and of fine woven linen, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And they made the shoham stones, placed in plated work of gold, engraved as signets are engraved, according to the names of the sons of Israel. And he put them on the shoulders of the shoulder garment, stones of remembrance for the sons of Israel, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he made the breastplate, a work of a skilled workman, like the work of the shoulder garment, of gold, of blue, and purple, and scarlet, and of fine woven linen. It was square. They made the breastplate double, its length a zerath, its width a zerath, doubled. And they filled it with 4 rows of stones. A row of ruby, a topaz, and an emerald was the first row. And the second row, a turquoise, a sapphire, and a diamond. And the third row, a jacinth, an agate, and an amethyst. And the fourth row, a beryl, a shoham, and a jasper, placed in plated work of gold in their mountings. And the stones were according to the names of the sons of Israel, 12, according to their names, engraved like a signet, each one with its own name, according to the 12 tribes. And they made braided chains of corded work for the breastplate at the ends of clean gold. And they made 2 mountings of gold and 2 gold rings, and put the 2 rings on the 2 ends of the breastplate. And the 2 ends of the 2 cords they fastened in the 2 mountings, and put them on the shoulder pieces of the shoulder garment in the front. And they made 2 rings of gold, and put them on the 2 ends of the breastplate, on the edge of it, which was on the inward side of the shoulder garment. And they made 2 gold rings, and put them on 2 shoulder pieces, underneath the shoulder garment, on the front of it, close to its seam, above the embroidered band of the shoulder garment. And they bound the breastplate by means of its rings to the rings of the shoulder garment with a blue cord, so that it would be above the embroidered band of the shoulder garment, and that the breastplate would not come loose from the shoulder garment, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he made the robe of the shoulder garment of woven work, all of blue. And the opening of the robe was in the middle, like the opening in scaled armor, with a woven binding all around the opening, so that it would not tear. And they made on the hem of the robe pomegranates of blue and purple and scarlet, twined. And they made bells of clean gold, and put the bells between the pomegranates on the hem of the robe, all around between the pomegranates, a bell and a pomegranate, a bell and a pomegranate, all around the hem of the robe, for the service as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And they made the long shirt of fine linen, the work of a weaver, for Aaron and his sons, and a turban of fine linen, and the turban ornaments of fine linen, and short trousers of fine woven linen, and a girdle of fine woven linen, with blue and purple and scarlet, the work of an embroiderer, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And they made the plate of the Kodesh sign of dedication of clean gold, and wrote on it an inscription like the engraving of a signet, Kodeshah, to Yahweh. And they put on it a blue cord, to fasten it above on the turban, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And all the work of the Mishkan, of the tent of appointment, was completed. And the children of Israel did according to all that Yahweh had commanded Moshe, so they did. And they brought the Mishkan to Moshe, the tent and all its furnishings, its hooks, its boards, its bars, and its columns, and its sockets, and the covering of ram skins dyed red, and the covering of fine leather, and the veil of the covering, the ark of the witness with its poles, and the lid of atonement, the table and all its utensils, and the showbread, the clean lampstand with its lamps, the lamps to be put in order, and all its utensils, and the oil for the light, and the altar of gold, and the anointing oil, and the sweet incense, and the covering for the tent door, the bronze altar and its bronze grating, its poles and all its utensils, the basin with its stand, the screens of the courtyard, its columns and its sockets, the covering for the courtyard gate, its cords and its pegs, and all the utensils for the service of the Mishkan, for the tent of appointment, the woven garments to do service in the Kodesh place, the Kodesh garments for Aaron the Kohen, and his sons' garments to serve as Kohanim, according to all that Yahweh had commanded Moshe, so the children of Israel did all the work. And Moshe looked over all the work, and saw they did as Yahweh had commanded, so they had done. And Moshe baraked them. Chapter 40. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, on the first day of the first month, you are to raise up the Mishkan of the tent of appointment, and shall put in it the ark of the witness, and screen the ark with the veil. And you shall bring in the table, and arrange what belongs on it, and bring in the lampstand, and light its lamps. And you shall put the altar of gold for the incense before the ark of the witness, and put up the covering of the door to the Mishkan. And you shall put the altar of the burnt offering before the door of the Mishkan of the tent of appointment, and shall put the basin between the tent of appointment and the altar, and shall put water therein. And you shall put up the courtyard all around, and shall place the covering of the courtyard gate, and shall take the anointing oil, and anoint the Mishkan, and all that is in it, and shall kadosh it, and all its utensils, and it shall be Kodesh. And you shall anoint the altar of the burnt offering, and all its utensils, and kadosh the altar, and the altar shall be most Kodesh. And you shall anoint the basin, and its stand, and kadosh it. And you shall bring Aaron and his sons to the door of appointment, and wash them with water. And you shall put the Kodesh garments on Aaron, and anoint him, and kadosh him, to serve as Kohen to me. And you shall bring his sons, and put long shirts on them, and shall anoint them, as you anointed their father. And they shall serve as Kohanim to me. And their anointing shall be for them an everlasting kahuna throughout their generations. And Moshe did according to all that Yahweh had commanded him. So he did. And it came to be, in the first month of the second year, on the first day of the month, that the Mishkan was raised up. And Moshe raised up the Mishkan, and placed its sockets, and put up its boards, and put in its altars, and raised up its columns, and spread the tent over the Mishkan, and put the covering of the tent on top of it, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he took the witness, and put it into the ark, and he put the poles through the rings of the ark, and put the lid of atonement on top of the ark, and brought the ark into the Mishkan, and placed the veil of the covering to screen off the ark of the witness, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he put the table in the tent of appointment on the north side of the Mishkan, outside the veil, and put the bread in order upon it, before Yahweh, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he put the lampstand in the tent of appointment, opposite the table on the south side of the Mishkan, and lit the lamps before Yahweh, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he put the gold altar in the tent of appointment, in front of the veil, and burned sweet incense on it, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he put up the covering to the door of the Mishkan. And he put the altar of burnt offering before the door of the Mishkan, of the tent of appointment, and offered upon it the burnt offering and the grain offering, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he put the basin between the tent of appointment and the altar, and put water therein for washing. And Moshe and Aaron and his sons washed their hands and their feet with water from it. As they went into the tent of appointment, and as they came near the altar, they would wash as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he raised up the courtyard all around the Mishkan and the altar, and placed the covering of the courtyard gate. And Moshe completed the work. And the cloud covered the tent of appointment, and the esteem of Yahweh filled the Mishkan. And Moshe was not able to come into the tent of appointment, because the cloud dwelt on it. And the esteem of Yahweh filled the Mishkan. And when the cloud was taken up from above the Mishkan, the children of Israel went onward in all their journeys. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not depart till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of Yahweh was on the Mishkan by day, and fire was on it by night, before the eyes of all the house of Israel in all their journeys. Baruch be the reading of the word. Shabbat Shalom.